I agree 100%. Stroud's had some tough games this year. Some of it's been on him. Some of it's been on the protection. You could see that he's not as comfortable as he was a year ago. He's starting to rush himself, and he's missing some throws, routine throws, because he's rushing himself. You can see it.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. That's because it's a teaching tutorial Thursday presented by DraftKings. That means that Greg Cosell, the civilian GOAT, 45 plus years breaking down the tape at NFL Films, is in the house. We'll talk to Greg about some of these trades that went down a couple days ago, as well as the biggest games, week 10 already in the National Football League momentarily. As a reminder, tomorrow already, not only am I giving you my picks straight up for every game in the NFL, as a reminder, you can also hear my picks against the spread on the Even Money podcast, but also I'll be announcing winners. Someone that went the extra mile spreading the word via social media or rating and reviewing the show, someone that took advantage of one of our glorious sponsors, and then someone that made a YouTube comment. I love sending you guys signed press passes or football cards or pictures if you prefer, and you can automatically get one of those if you get the best holiday gift I'm aware of for a loved one, myfrontpagestory.com. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
Greg Cosell is presented by Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka. Please drink responsibly. Greg, let's start with a couple of these trades. Curious to get your thoughts. I think most people have a pretty good idea about Marshawn Lattimore, but big move. It was the biggest trade compensation, 3rd and 4th round picks, the Commanders to the Saints to bring in Lattimore. What has Lattimore been? What is he still at this stage of his career? What's he bringing to the Commanders?
Yeah, he's been injured quite a bit the last couple of years, Ross, but there was a stretch of 2-3 years, and I'm sure you remember, I'm sure fans remember, where many considered him a top 2-3 corner in the league, and I think that was a fair assessment. He was a physical corner. He had really loose hips. Very often, he could make turns with his hips that you just didn't see many corners make. Obviously, the Commanders felt that they needed another corner, and I think they did, because they've been playing Sainer still, the rookie from Michigan, on the outside. Okay, he clearly beat out Emmanuel Forbes, who obviously Dan Quinn and his staff did not draft, and they don't view Forbes as a starting outside corner. But I think Sainer still is really at his best and was perceived by most as a slot corner. But they've been playing him on the outside, and now he can move back to the slot, where I thought he was very much like Mike Hilton coming out of Michigan. But Lattimore will now play on the outside opposite St. Juste. They've got two big, athletic, physical corners now in St. Juste and Lattimore. I think that's a really, really big move for the Commanders.
So the thing I always appreciate is just he plays hard. He is an aggressive guy. I actually called his game when he was in the U.S. Army Bowl a long time ago. I just appreciate his competitiveness and tenacity. You know, the other guy I really wanted to make sure I asked you about, Greg, Jonathan Mingo.
Yeah.
This is interesting on so many levels. The guy was what, like the 33rd or 38th pick or something?
Yes.
In last year's draft. Wasn't really able to get on the field much in Carolina, who needs receivers, needs weapons, but he couldn't get on the field. And yet the Cowboys evidently like him enough to give up a 4th round pick for him. What was he coming out of college, and what do we think happened in Carolina?
Hard to know what happened in Carolina. Clearly, for the last 2 years, their pass game has been not particularly functional, so it's hard to know, and we're not there every day, but I really liked Mingo coming out of Ole Miss. I thought he was one of the most intriguing prospects in the 2023 draft. He had a really good profile: size, stride length, physical strength, competitiveness, pretty good speed. He lined up all over the formation at Ole Miss. I thought he was one of the top 5 receiving prospects in the 2023 draft. It's easy right now to say, what are the Cowboys doing? Mingo hasn't really produced. I don't think he scored a touchdown in 2 years. But, you know, that pass game, as I think we all agree, would be viewed as not overly functional the last couple of years with Bryce Young playing. So I'm curious to see. Now, he's obviously going to a situation where Dak Prescott sounds like he could be done for the year. If his hamstring did pull away from the bone, then he's probably not playing again this year. But so, he's going to another difficult situation. But I really liked his tape coming out of college.
Well, I know he's way up there in terms of the drop rate. That's one thing I did see. When he has played, he's had some drops, and maybe they just didn't trust him. You never know.
Yeah, which was
some
not really a
guys.
big issue coming out of college. He had a few drops on routine catches later in his last season, but I didn't view that as a big overall issue. Maybe it's, obviously you move up a class. Maybe it's become a bigger issue and it's become a problem. But clearly he did not get on the field a lot, and they didn't view him as a meaningful receiver in their scheme.
Yeah, the other thing is people lose sight of sometimes. Some of these teams, Greg, they don't ask the receivers to do that much. And that might not have been the case with him at Ole Miss because you said they were moving around all the time. But some of these guys, they get to the next level and they're not used to reading coverage as they're running their route. They're just used to kind of running their route.
And that's what we don't know. Yeah.
All right, let's talk tonight's game. It's a good one. Bengals, Ravens. Both teams really need this game. What interests you the most in this one?
Well, they've played already, and it was a really high-scoring game. And, I think you would think it would be very similar. Right now, the Ravens' offense is playing at a really, really high level, both run game, pass game. Lamar, we've talked about Lamar, that he's playing at a really high level right now. I think what was interesting to me, and this is not a trade that happened this week, but the Deontay Johnson trade fascinated me for this reason, Ross, if I could, just because they play the lowest percentage of 11 personnel, meaning 3 wide receivers, of any team in the NFL. Only 27% of their offensive snaps come out of 11 personnel, far and away the lowest in the league. Patrick Ricard plays like 40+% of their snaps. So now they obviously made the trade for Johnson with something in mind. I don't know what that is because they've got Flowers, they've got Aguilar, they've got Bateman. Who's the odd man out? Are they going to change what they're doing and play more 11 personnel when their offense is clearly humming? I found that trade to be, just for me, again, without knowing what's in their building and what they're thinking, I found that trade to be interesting. Let's use that word, because I'm not going to rip coaches. I never do, because they know more than I do about their own players. But they're not an 11 personnel offense, and they're playing at a really high level right now.
Well, a couple things. One is they got him for not much at all.
Right.
And
I don't know the contract situation, by the way. It's very possible that after this season, Bateman's gone, Aguilar, I don't know all that stuff. So someone could jump in and say that's why they made the trade.
Yeah, and Likely's hurt, so maybe for a little bit they need to do more 11 personnel. My guess is they probably see Deontay Johnson as an upgrade over Bateman and Aguilar, and that by the end of the year he'll be playing more than those guys. But
probably
we'll see. I mean, those guys, certainly the game I did against the Browns, those guys let down Lamar Jackson for sure with some critical drops. What about the Bills and the Colts? Greg, in particular, we talked last week, Colts made the big move, moving on from Richardson to Flacco for at least a week, and did not look real good.
No, their offense did not look particularly good, but I think, Flacco will settle in. He'll have some good games. The Bills are an interesting team. They've been a running team much of this year, and then last week in a game that was close, they kind of switched up, and they had Josh Allen drop back far more percentage-wise than he had been in recent weeks. And the run game, I don't want to say they abandoned it, but they had, I think with Davis and Cook, they might have had 18 runs, if memory serves me correctly, and Josh Allen clearly dropped back well over 40 times. So that was kind of an interesting change from what they had been. And I didn't think their pass game was particularly good last week. To me, their pass game's been very up and down. They don't really, which is odd to say given who the quarterback is, but they don't really attack at the intermediate and vertical levels very much. Now, that could be one reason why Josh has only thrown 2 picks. By the way, neither one being his fault. This week, the pick he threw should have been a touchdown to Coleman, and it just bounced right off his hands. But they're an interesting team on offense because they score a lot of points, and they're not turning it over, but they don't really have a week-to-week intermediate vertical passing game.
Wow. Well, I think that's probably part of the reason maybe why they got Amari Cooper.
Yeah, and it could be by design. I mean, maybe they're not that comfortable with their wideouts. Shakir's a really good player, but obviously he's not a vertical dimension. Coleman is still a rookie, and I think there's probably ups and downs with him still to this point. I know he has a wrist injury now, so I don't know what his status is for this week. Cooper did not play last week. That could have also limited, what they wanted to call in their playbook. So we'll see how it plays out as the season progresses. They just happen to be in a division where, they're pretty close to clinching the division.
This next game, Greg, is really interesting with the Patriots and the Bears. Now, I don't go back, unless it's a game I'm calling, I don't go back and watch the All-22 or the coaching tape of these guys. But what I do see of them, watching the highlights, watching Red Zone, watching some cut-ups of the games, is it crazy to say that it looks like Drake May is playing better than Caleb Williams when you just watch them and see him in the pocket and what they're doing?
Yeah, and I'm look, you know me well enough to know I don't make definitive judgments about quarterbacks, week to week and based on their rookie season, because there's a major learning curve, which I think unfortunately has been lost in the minds of a lot of people, especially when a quarterback every once in a while steps in and does well. So they assume that every quarterback is going to step in and do well. And if they don't, that means there's something wrong with the coaches. I think Williams, where I think he needs work, and this is not a surprise, by the way, and he could get there. I don't think that he has a great feel for the pocket. And by the way, we've discussed this. A lot of people will hear that and say, I don't know what I'm talking about because he's so mobile and he can make plays outside the pocket. You and you play at O-line, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a major difference between moving within the pocket, which helps your offensive lineman, as opposed to just getting out of there, which very often hurts your offensive lineman. And I think he needs to continue to work on moving within the pocket. And I don't think he has a natural feel for that right now. Can he get there? That's a hard question to answer. He's incredibly gifted. The ball comes out of his hand about as well as you could possibly want, and he'll make some great throws. But he just needs some work on the subtleties and nuances of the game, which is different than designing plays for him. Those are two different things. I'm talking about the fundamentals and the mechanics of the position. May, on the other hand, I think his second start, it was the start prior to when he got the concussion. I forget who that was against. Maybe New Orleans, if memory serves me correctly. He looked very, very good. This past week against Tennessee, I thought it took him a while to get into the game. I thought in the first half, you could see it on tape, he was just reacting too quickly. Everything was happening a little too fast. And then in the second half, he settled down. People probably look at the interception he threw in overtime. That was not a bad read at all. It was a good read. He just made a really bad throw, but it was not a bad read. So, these are quarterbacks that have ups and downs. You don't want to get caught up in judging and making a definitive statement about every single snap because some are going to be good, some are going to be bad.
Well, it's funny what you say about the pocket movement. I would say that's probably maybe my number one criticism of Jalen Hurts. He does not have a great feel for movement in the pocket. I think there's a lot of times where he could move subtly and still throw the football. I will say this. I think he's gotten better at it. He's not bailing and running to the right as much as he was.
Yep.
But I still don't think that's a strength. When you've seen some of these other guys over the years, Breeze and Peyton Manning and Brady and some of these guys, that they're just masters at sliding around that pocket. It's noticeable when other guys aren't. Let's talk about the Steelers and the Commanders. It's a big game. We talked about the new corner for the Commanders, but the Steelers also got a new receiver in Mike Williams.
Yeah, I think the Steelers are settling into a very interesting team on offense with Russell Wilson. In some ways, it's similar to the way in which he played when he was with Seattle. In the last two games, and of course they're coming off a bye, but in the two games he started, Najee Harris had, I think, 19-plus carries in each game, rushing for over 100 yards. Wilson, a lot of rollouts, a lot of design movement, a lot of play action. taking some vertical shots as well. That's where Mike Williams can come in as well, because that's essentially kind of what he is. I mean, assuming health. He's been injured so much in his career, it's hard to get a true read as to what he still is, but that's what he is at his best. So they've got vertical dimensions now with Williams and Pickens. Even Austin can run. I mean, I remember when he came out of Memphis, I believe he was an under 4.4 guy because he's a track guy. So their offense is settling into, I think, what really fits Russell Wilson. So you've got the run game as the foundation. You've got the design boot action, whether it's straight boot or play action boot, get him out of the pocket. And then you've got the vertical shots. That's what Russell Wilson does best as a quarterback. And with the defense they have, in some ways, it's very much the Seattle model. I mean, I don't know if their defense is quite the Legion of Boom, but it's a very, very good defense. And they just upgraded it as well with Preston Smith. So, their team, they're a very interesting team now going down the stretch.
Well, and Russell Wilson, he's going to throw it to a guy if he trusts him in man-to-man coverage.
No question.
And that's Pickens and that's Freiermuth. And now if they have another guy, now they have Mike Williams. Now he's got a bunch of guys that he's going to give them a chance, because he doesn't look at them as 50-50 balls when they're good, and they're not. Those guys, those guys come down with more of them.
And it fits what he is as a quarterback. It fits what he is. The offense now fits what he is.
Yep. Let's talk about one of the bigger games on Sunday. Eagles, Cowboys. Cowboys, looks like Cooper Rush will be the quarterback. Yeah. Everybody always curious what you're seeing from the Eagles too, Greg.
Yeah, the Eagles have also settled in much like the Steelers. Saquon Barkley, percentage-wise, has the highest percentage of first down runs of any back in the NFL, Ross. So we know what they have settled into. And again, we don't have to interpret this. This is how they're playing on offense. This is how the coaching staff sees them playing on offense. And Hurts does not turn the ball over. That cannot be overstated, Ross. You know that as a former player. He does not turn the ball over. They've won 4 in a row. He's not turned it over. They're not asking him to drop back 35, 40 times a game. And there's no question that his running ability, situationally, designed runs, scrambles, that defensive coordinators in the league are game planning for that stuff. That is a meaningful part of their offense. It makes their offense difficult to defend. They're going to take their shots. Hurts is a really good deep ball thrower. I think about the 46-yarder he hit to Smith last week. I think it was either late third quarter, early fourth quarter when the game started to get close. They lined up in 13 personnel, okay? 3 tight ends. Play action, mini boot action. It's a shot play. And Smith ran a great route. Hurts made a great throw, hitting him in stride, and then he threw the touchdown to Smith, which was also a great throw. So Hurts can get the ball down the field, and they're going to attack down the field based on the construct of their offense with Barkley as the foundation of it.
Any Cooper Rush thoughts or no?
I mean, when he's played, he's actually been, played pretty well. I didn't study him this week. I didn't go back and look at him from I think he started 5 or 6 games. But you can line up and play with him. The problem they have is they just have no run game whatsoever. Just none. And, obviously, even Dak needs a run game. Cooper Rush is certainly going to need a run game. And by the way, the Eagles defense, they're playing much, much better. Cooper DeJean has really, I think he's been starting since week 6. He's played really well. Zach Bond has played at a really high level for pretty much all this season. And in the Vic Fangio defense, linebackers are really, really important.
That's a great point about Bond. That's an unbelievable story to find a guy as an off-the-ball inside backer that
who never played stack backer.
That is wild. Let's get to one of the juicy games. Sunday night, Lions-Texans.
Yeah.
The Lions made a trade for Zadarius Smith. I don't know if he'll play or not Sunday night. I know they said they gave him a couple days off or whatever, but this would be a good team for him to play against. I was watching some Texans, the sacks they gave up against the Jets. It's very disappointing
Yes.
Very disappointing. Their pass protection, and I think it's
bad.
really affecting Stroud, Greg.
I agree 100%. You know, Stroud's had some tough games this year. Some of it's been on him. Some of it's been on the protection. You could see that he's not as comfortable as he was a year ago. He's starting to rush himself, and he's missing some throws, routine throws, because he's rushing himself. You can see it. You know, as I said, that's not an X and O point, but you can just see it watching the tape that he's just playing a little too fast. The Lions offensively, it's really remarkable what Jared Goff is doing. He hasn't had to throw the ball a ton over the last number of weeks. I don't know if their run game gets talked about enough. I mean, I know it gets talked about when Gibbs has a big run, but it's been an equitable distribution. Montgomery has 110 carries, Gibbs has 103. They're a zone-based run team. Their O-line has been phenomenal. You'll really appreciate this. But Frank Ragnow, I mean, his ability, and I remember hearing Dante Scarnecchia talk about this in a podcast I listened to a couple of years ago, talking about the importance of front side reach blocks in the zone run game. I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. Ragnow is a freaking master at that, and that is so critical to their zone run game.
He is a really good player, and the fact that he's doing it with an inoperable toe is just
it's remarkable.
Makes it even more impressive. What about Monday Night Football, Greg? It's the Dolphins and the Rams. Tua looks pretty good. The Dolphins are moving the ball, Achane, but they're not winning the games. And then the Rams had that miraculous win over the Seahawks.
Yeah, well, I think that the Dolphins' offense is slowly, incrementally starting to come around a bit. We haven't really seen what they are, except for a couple of plays here and there, those in-breakers. They had 2 last week to Hill. So I think with Tua coming back, it's going to start to come around. But I think the Rams' defense is an unknown story over the last 3 weeks. They have now become a dime defense, okay? They are playing 25 snaps, give or take, of dime in each of the last 3 games, with a kid playing as the dime safety named Jalen McCullough, who has sort of safety linebacker traits. Over the last 3 games, they're the best third down defense in the NFL. And their front four, I mean, it's a young group. You look at those 2 tackles, Kobe Turner and Braden Fisk, the rookie, athletic, explosive players. And Verse, you watch him every week. He is a speed to power rusher, and every week he has snaps where he just drives through tackles. So this is a young, up-and-coming defense, and what they're doing out of dime is really, really intriguing.
Greg, you're neither young nor up and coming, but
well,
you're still
I'm definitely
amazing.
not young, Ross. That's true. Yeah, I'm not offended by that because that's just a statement of fact.
Thanks so much, man.
Appreciate it.
You know what is young and up and coming, Greg? West Shore Home. The business, I don't know, 15 years maybe they've been around, 10 to 15 years. They are killing it because they are awesome. Free installation plus 18 months, no interest, no payments. Also, how about this? Showers only? They are guaranteeing install by Christmas or it's free. I just decided this is the best Christmas gift ever, to get a new entry door or a new shower. I mean, I'm getting 2 new entry doors. I've already done 2 showers. Huge fan. I'm locked in, by the way, the day before Thanksgiving. So make sure you're checking westshorehome.com/Ross for the before and after pictures. Day before Thanksgiving, I'm getting 2 new doors, including to my office studio. So you guys can check that out. westshorehome.com/Ross, westshorehome.com/Ross. Hey, so this Smirnoff contest is ending soon. I've been telling you guys about it the last couple weeks. It's WeDoGameDays.com. It ends November 15th. They're giving fans in select areas of the country a chance to win the ultimate game day experience, tickets, sideline passes, much more. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please not share with anyone under legal drinking age. No purchase necessary. 21 plus and 11/15/24. See rules at website for participating area and other important details. Sponsored by Diageo Americas Incorporated, New York, New York. Here's the deal. There's no I in football. It's a we thing. You experience it together. Good drinks, good folks. That's my friends at Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka, an official vodka partner of the NFL. WeDoGameDays.com. WeDoGameDays.com.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, a few notes. The Jags, they're bringing back quarterback C.J. Beathard, signing him off the Dolphins practice squad. And the Bills, they're signing defensive tackle Jordan Phillips.
Jordan Phillips, it was like 5 seconds after he got cut by the Cowboys that he posts on Instagram, run it back. He's an interesting guy because he's always played so well, I feel like, when he's with the Bills and at times with other teams. But it seems like he's always bouncing around, but he's definitely got it in him to play well. And we'll talk about tomorrow on the Picks Friday, but Trevor Lawrence is banged up. The Jags had to get another quarterback, and obviously Beathard knows the offense. He was on the Dolphins practice squad, so they snagged him.
We got a game tonight, and I think it's a great one. Good Thursday night matchup. The Bengals and the Ravens, they're facing off. Who do you like and why?
Absolutely love when we have a good Thursday night game. I'll actually be flying to Hawaii during the game, so I'll be looking forward to that. That'll be awesome. That'll give me 3 hours of that 6-hour flight where I can just watch a really good game. I will not be happy if there's some reason I can't watch it. Anyway, my Thursday night football pick is presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. It's a tough one because Joe Burrow is dialed in. The Bengals need the game desperately. But to me, no T. Higgins is the difference. You know, the Bengals weren't able to get it done at home with T. Higgins. I'm not going to pick them to be able to get it done on the road without T. Higgins. I think it's an awesome game, high scoring, back and forth, could go either way, a lot like their first matchup. But ultimately, I'm taking Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Say 38-35 Ravens. Awesome Thursday night game.
We've got some other news. That includes the Titans. They're signing safety Mike Edwards after he was cut by the Bills. Buffalo, they're bringing in defensive lineman Quentin Jefferson after he was cut by Cleveland. And the Raiders, they're hiring former NFL head coach Norv Turner.
Norv Turner's been out for a while now, like a long time, but obviously considered one of the brighter offensive minds. His son is going to be the offensive coordinator for the Raiders. So dad's coming in to help him out, work with his son. That's pretty cool. Gets to be closer to the grandkids. As for Quentin Jefferson, the Bills got 2 D tackles yesterday. Jefferson and, who we were talking about earlier. And the thing that's crazy about that is that matters. You need to come at them in waves when you get to the postseason. So that gives them some depth. And then, Mike Edwards just wasn't playing for the Bills. Looks like, especially after Quandre Diggs went down, he'll have more of a chance to play in Tennessee. Other than that, I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. Told you guys earlier in the show, anybody gets one of these for anybody in their life, forward me the email receipt or whatever you get, ross@rosstucker.com, and I will send you a signed football card or press pass or picture. That's how much I love people going ahead and getting these for some loved one. myfrontpagestory.com. Sport or culture, humanheadnyc.com, backofficeschedule.com, Pizza Boy Brewing.